morning, rise and shine, and welcome to the Younib Breakfast Show with me, Peninah Wachera. I hope you guys have woken up well and are excited to face your day. For me, I am really, really excited, and my morning is quite good, yeah? As it is the norm here at the Younib Breakfast Show, let's go straight to the morning bite of the day. Today's conversation, we're going to be speaking about self-harm and suicide. And this is something that we've been seeing a lot of the youths going through. And we have a psychologist will be able to help us actually get to understand this conversation, yeah? And remember, this show is probably brought to you by Miss Yo Ashen and Younib organization. And we're trying to reach out to the community to teach you more on mental health and all, keep you informed also on everything that partakes the mental health, yeah? So if you know of anybody who needs mental support, you can always ask them to call the number 0700-352-250, and our very own psychologist will be able to help them out, yeah? Remember, you can also interact with us through our social media platform, Younib_TV on Instagram, Younib Media TV on Facebook, and there's a number on your screen. You can SMS or WhatsApp 0719-144-144. Let's dive into the conversation. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you this morning?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm also doing good, and I'm very, very excited actually for this day.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, so kindly look at the camera because of our new viewers and introduce yourself.
Okay. So, a beautiful morning. My name is Waweru, and I am a psychologist. And I'm happy to be here today.
Karibu sana, and it's always a pleasure actually having you here in studio, yeah? So today we're talking about self-harm and suicide. And I'd like us to start with what's the difference between self-harm and suicide?
Okay. So, there's a dichotomy between self-harm and suicide in as much as they are conjoined at the hip, rather, because self-harm can be suicidal or non-suicidal. You know, all that matters is the intention. See, so the people who do self-harm with the aim of taking their lives, and there are people who do self-harm without the aim of taking their lives. So the intention is the real dichotomy. It is the real difference between suicidal self-harm and non-suicidal self-harm.
Okay. Now that we've gotten to understand the difference between self-harm and suicide, I'd like you to maybe explain to us some psychological and emotional factors that may lead individuals to engage in self-harm or contemplate suicide.
Okay. So the biggest factor that comes from all that is a sharp decrease rather in esteem. You know, the issues of esteem and identity are very important when it comes to the development of a human being, because people want to belong, people want to know who they are, people want to be accepted in society. Okay, and with all that, it builds their own sense of esteem. You know, in previous shows we've talked about something we call the Pygmalion effect, that whatever happens in your external environment shapes your internal environment. That means if people celebrate you and see you and accept you for who you are, you're more likely to see yourself the same way. And the inverse is also true. So if you've come across a world of abuse, rejection, you're more likely to have a negative self-image and a perception of yourself. Therefore, it may result in seeing the feelings of worthlessness or lack of utility in someone's life, you know, asking yourself, what am I really doing here? What is the use of me being this way? Okay? And you find that with that, people stop thinking highly of themselves. That's why you hear comments like, if I'm to go today, nobody will miss me, really. Okay? And there's a misconception that people who engage in the self-harm and suicidal behaviors really look for attention. But it's not really attention in the sense of, in the usual sense. But what usually happens is people really believe or internalize the belief that there is no role they play in the society, you know, or they are not useful, they're not needed, they do not belong, they can't fit in. See, they are alone. So at the end of the day, you find that either because of the various stresses that we have in life, or because of traumatic experiences that happened, a certain image is built in this person's mind, especially regarding themselves and their abilities or inabilities. You know? And you feel, and this is something you will see, especially within conversations. You know, this is something you will notice as people are dealing with, well, people are dealing with their day-to-day life. You know, and you find that again, as people, we were never really meant to be solitary beings. I think human beings are the only beings that cannot survive without a tribe. We need a community that holds us together. Okay, so a lack of that can also lead to the development of esteem issues. It can also lead to the development of identity issues, because you do not know who you are and the role you play in your society. You know, also you can find that coping mechanisms, improper coping mechanisms, can also come up as a result. You know, this is whereby you do not find ways of effectively dealing with your stresses, the challenges of life. You know, and that can also lead in mood changes, which can trigger suicidal ideations or matters of self-harm. So there are a number of challenges that can come up as a result, and they all boil down to how this person views themselves and the role they play in whatever society they are in. Yeah.
Okay, and it's important for us actually to understand that, because once we start, we get to understand the key reason and also the meaning, or what it all drives us, what causes suicide and self-harm. I think it will help us actually become more better informed, and also see how we can be able to improve ourselves when it comes to knowing better a friend. This is something that a friend has started saying, so what's the issue with this person? And we can be able also to see if it's a family member going through all this. We can say, okay, then there's a problem here. It might be self-suicide or self-harm. Yeah. So I'd like us to take this short break, and we'll be back with more concerning the conversation. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is still the Younib Breakfast Show, and today we're discussing about self-harm and suicide. And you see, for many, we've had a lot of people saying, I knew of a friend who committed suicide. And most of the time we hear people who have committed suicide or people who are having self-harm are mostly depressed. So Dennis, what would you say when it comes to this conversation? Because we realized, or many people I have interacted with, who will say, Ama, who know of somebody who has maybe was thinking, contemplating about suicide, mostly they're depressed or anxious. Why is that tendency always there?
Okay. So you see, as I've said, we all have an innate need to belong. We all have an innate need to form an identity. We all have a need to have a community or a group that we feel is our own, and we need to be understood, you know. And when there's a problem in that, that's the first challenge that can arise. There's also an issue with how we deal with our stressors, you know, because we're becoming more individualized in our societies and our communities. You live in a house where you don't even know whether your neighbor is there or not. For a matter of fact, you don't even care. You know, you don't know what your neighbor is going through or what is happening to your neighbor, and the same thing happens with your neighbor. We are drifting away from the days where everyone knew everyone in the village, where you can just tell someone, you know, X, and they will tell you about the particular person, their family, and their ancestors. You know, and the problem with drifting away from that is, one, you find that there are no shared problems. There are no shared problems. This is what I mean. You see, if there is someone who you have a sense of community or bond with, whenever you have something, you don't really feel burdened to let them know. You know? And that is what mostly happens in communal setups. You find that today they're going for a fundraiser for X, whose something has happened in their life. Tomorrow they're going for a wedding of Y, who something also good has happened in their life. There is that sense of community such that even if something was to happen to the community, members respond and respond very fast. Okay? Therefore, you find that there is that way of managing stressors in that you always have something or somewhere to fall back to. In as much as they may not know the technicalities of the depression and anxiety that you're mentioning about, they give you a fallback plan. Get. Secondly, you find that with urbanization and everything, there's a lot of stress that is coming up, and employment or underemployment. You know, you find someone who, because of the rising cost of living, has to say take up 3 or 4 jobs, you know, or start businesses here and there, and they're just facing stress left, right, and center. They find people who do not really have a sense of family. They're just people who stay together, but you can't really talk about them being connected. You know, you can't really remember the last time they sat down and had a conversation that was meaningful. You see, you can't remember the last time you sat down and asked the people you're living with, how are you doing really? So with that, people start to learn that there is no one I can really turn to deal with the issues I have, because after all, everybody has their own problems. You know, the other issue we have is minimization. Have you ever gone to tell someone something and then they tell you, "You too"? So you find that there are problems that are minimized, or people minimize other people's problems. In that, you if the problem is brought to you, you'll make me feel as if my problem is a little problem. You know, some problems, especially among children and developing adults or adults that are growing, you find that I mean teenagers, you find that with them, there are problems that are rather of an emotional nature, or they also have the stresses of their own. In their own language, someone they were going to play, someone did not come to play today. That thing is stressing that child. But to you, it may be nothing, right? Or someone likes a particular girl, but, the girl is with someone else. That is also something stressing. Okay, but when they come to tell you, you're busy worrying about how you're going to provide for that child, how you're going to sort out your bills, and so on and so forth. So to you, that is an issue. Okay, so you end up minimizing this person's troubles. What are you teaching them? You're teaching them that my problems don't really matter. The issues I have don't really matter. Therefore, they'll find other ways of letting out that stress, letting out that pressure they have. Okay, and at the end of it all, it may result in, again, self-harm or suicide, unfortunately. Another thing you find with that is judgment. You find that we have now people who look for news and people who really find pleasure in airing out other people's information. What's the need for me to open up to you if I'm going to see screenshots posted anywhere? Yeah. What's the need for me to open up to you if you're going to air my life out? I'd rather not. So people opt not to. Okay? And with that also comes the lack of trust. As I've said, people are very individualized nowadays. So if we are technically strangers who say hi to each other and happen to live in the same place, where will I get the energy to come and tell you, hi, such and such a thing has happened in my life, and expect you to just sit down and listen? Where do I get that energy? Because after all, we have no rapport. There's nothing we can really sit down and talk about rather than the greetings, say, we have in the morning or in the evening or whenever we meet, which are also not a guarantee. The other problem that is there is the issue of, you find that people really do not have a supporting system. There's a lack of a support system, as I said in the beginning, the lack of a community you call your own. Therefore, it gives you a sense of helplessness. Especially with the issues that happen in your day-to-day life. Because you don't really need someone to rely on, but you need to know that if there is anything, there is such and such a person I can rely on. 9 out of 10 times you'll not find yourself relying on them. Okay? But the thought that there is somewhere I can fall back to gives you the confidence to actually push. Okay? There's something we call learned helplessness. And learned helplessness is a situation that comes by where it is conditioned into you that there is nothing you can do through a situation. Okay? So you find that with people nowadays, with the lack of options, the lack of hope, the lack of knowing that something can always turn out a particular way, and if it turns out a particular way, there's someone I know that I can turn to for help. The lack of that gives people that sense of helplessness. There is nobody I have to work with in this journey. So I'm either working in this journey out of survival or I'm alone. Okay? Because nobody will understand, which is not true. You see? So there are a lot of issues that come up as far as depression and anxiety are concerned, and there are a lot of issues that drive people to, again, self-harm or suicide. And it is usually because of unhealthy thought patterns that lead to unhealthy emotional patterns. Yes.
Okay, I hope we are all following up and we now know that we're not supposed to be judging those people who maybe come to us and tell us, okay, I am going through this and this. I feel like can commit suicide. Like, it's important for us to work with them and to listen to them. Giving them a listening ear is very, very important here. As we think about this, remember to interact with us through our social media platform, Younib_TV on Instagram, Younib Media TV on Facebook, and there's a number on your screen. You can SMS or WhatsApp 0719 144 144. Remember, if you need any psychological help, or you know of a friend who is maybe going through self-harm or maybe contemplating suicide, you can always give them the number 0700 352 250 to speak to our own psychologist. So for now, let's take this short break and we'll be back with more. Welcome back. This is still the Younib Breakfast Show, and today we're speaking about suicide and self-harm. Yeah. So as we are doing this conversation, remember you can always interact with us through our social media platform, Younib_TV on Instagram, Younib Media TV on Facebook, and there's a number on your screen. You can SMS or WhatsApp 0719 144 144. This show is also proudly brought to you by Missio Ashen and Younib Organization, and we are trying to reach out to the community to teach you on matters mental health. So if you know of anybody who needs the help, you can always call the number 0700 352 250, and our very own psychologist will be able to help you out. So before the break, we've been informed on why most times we can see members or people with suicide and self-harm tendencies. So coming back, I'd like to know, Dennis, how can individuals really build resilience and coping mechanisms to manage feelings of hopelessness or distress that may help them or lead them to self-harm and suicide?
Okay. Firstly, I'd start by saying that stress is natural. It's something that must be there. It has to be. For life to work, there must be some level of stress. Okay? And it is possible for life to work with stress. Okay? For you to have a positive life with stress. The problem is not the stress. The problem is, do you have efficient ways to manage it? You know? And the thing with stress is, it's supposed to be like a river. Something that comes and goes. It's not supposed to stay. So you find that the thing with people that happens is, if you cut out the sense of if you start holding on to things too much, you start building a dam. And what happens to the dam? It holds water behind it. So you find that there are things that will come, the stressors of life. Something will happen and you'll have a hard time processing it. And when you have a hard time processing it, you end up holding on to it. You end up holding on to the identities that particular stressor has given you. And I usually say, just because something happened to you does not really define you, regardless of the role you played in it. It doesn't mean that because something happened or someone said you're worthless, that you actually are. Or something happened to actually show you that you might be lazy or inefficient, that you actually are. That's not all that defines you. And there's always a warning about judging books by their cover. But you should not also judge a book by any one page that is written. The book might start with romance, go to a tragedy, then it becomes a comedy, and everything else. Okay? So you find that you should also not judge yourself by the happenings of everyday life. That is one. Number two, I think it is also important to forgive yourself and forgive others without really expecting an apology from them. Because that is also something that can be important, especially in the cases of traumatic experiences or adverse childhood experiences. Just simply because someone did something in your life or someone did something to you when you were at a particular age doesn't mean that you hold on to it. There's a chance that that person does not even remember what happened. So you find that forgiving yourself and forgiving them is a way to also manage, or build resilience. Number three, remember, in as much as you're not a bed of roses, there are good parts to you. And there are parts that you need to really celebrate, because you find that with people experiencing self-harm or suicidal ideations, they rarely see the goodness in them. Okay? They cannot see the goodness in themselves. They cannot see their abilities. They see their inabilities, because that is what has been magnified in their lives. Okay? There's also need to, and I can't stress this enough, there's also need to build a community, a support system. Do you have someone who when things get thick, you can look for this person and have a conversation, open, honest, and meaningful conversation without fear of judgment? So you find that if you know that 9 out of 10 times, you do not even need them. But knowing that if I need someone, I can find X will be there. It helps you build resilience, because it will help your mind to know that whatever I'm doing, in as much as it's risky in its own way, I'm also prepared in my own way. Okay, so it gets rid of that feeling of uncertainty. Okay, and also the last thing I believe is in establishing environments that are safe. What do I mean by establishing environments that are safe? Can you be able to have difficult conversations? Can you be able to even tell your friends, hi, this is what I'm dealing with. This is what I'm going through. Can you? Because sometimes it's not that the environment is lacking. It's not that that person cannot be there to you, or that person cannot be there for you, but you cannot bring yourself to let this person know that I actually need help. Yeah.
Okay, so now that we've gotten to understand what individuals can do. Yeah. And before in the second segment, you had mentioned about community, friends, family. Yeah. And I want us to actually speak about that. How can I, as a friend, maybe when I notice, okay, my friend is going through this and this, and most times we know it's been challenging for people to check out on friends, and mostly they don't even know what to ask and what to say to people who are going through self-harm. So what can a friend do or a family member do to help a person going through self-harm, or who is seeing somebody is struggling with suicidal thoughts?
Okay. First and foremost, you find that if someone has come to you in confidence that they are, battling that, first and foremost, maintain the confidence, regardless of who you are. Maintain the confidence, because that is one way to build trust. And the thing is, people don't just come and just open up to you once. They start by telling you little things. And then, based on how you deal with those little things, they now know how to handle you. See? So, firstly is maintaining confidence. Secondly is establishing a free or an environment where someone feels comfortable. This can be through actively letting them know that if you ever need someone to talk to, you can find me. Okay? Or you can also create an environment where someone really feels free around you. Someone feels comfortable in letting you know about what they're doing. This is in also reducing the level of judgment that happens. Okay? Because one thing that makes most people fear coming out with such issues is the fear of judgment, and especially since you find that the way these narratives have been constructed, they've been constructed in ways that have been almost criminal. Suicide until early this year was a crime in Kenya, punishable by the laws of Kenya. Okay? It was in the penal code. So you find that someone coming to tell you that, and even you see the terminologies we use, committing suicide, it's like a crime someone is doing. People don't commit accidents. Accidents happen to them. If you ask, how did someone die? He got into an accident. That is a way through which he died. He lost his life. But if you talk about people that commit suicide, you make that thing an action that is willful. Okay? Which sometimes, that may not be the case. People die by suicide. And they do not die by suicide by choice. They die by suicide because they feel as if they've run out of options again, which is not the case. Okay? So you find that knowing that and establishing an environment which has some sense of openness and non-judgmental helps in making these people come out. Okay? Number 3, can you entertain difficult conversations as a family member? Do you really have time to ask your children, how are you doing really? Oh, bora umelipa school fees, the kids are full, and your house is, the rent to your house is paid, you don't have anything else to do. Start knowing what is really going on in these people's lives. That is what makes it actually simpler for people who have problems to come and approach you. If you do not really know what is happening with your friend, and say you've not talked for 3 months, and then you reach out and ask them, but they hire you, they'll just tell you I'm fine. Because what goes on in their minds is, how do I start explaining things from 3 months ago? Okay? So form a habit of doing regular check-ins on them. So it will, such that it will be like following a program. You just can't watch 8 seasons of a movie. But if a movie releases one season a bit at a time, you find it even easier and more relatable to keep up with the happenings of that particular movie. So do the same with your life. I don't see a point of you saying you have a friend who you talked to last year. You don't even know how they are, or even if they are alive, you know. So form a habit of doing regular check-ins with your friends, with your family members, and learn how are they doing really. That is also a way to build trust. And lastly, if you feel as if you are at risk of self-harm or suicide, there are toll-free numbers. Seek help, either professional help or confide in someone. You know, there are toll-free numbers. I think the most known one is 1199 by Red Cross. They offer free psychosocial support. There's also the mobile number you've provided. See, and I also believe your support is also free, right? So you find that, reach out. The thing with reaching out to those toll-free numbers is your confidentiality or your anonymity is assured. You know, that I can call and I'll find someone who we can have a conversation with. So at the end of the day, I'd like to finish by saying you're not alone. And whatever you're dealing with is like a river. It will pass, you know. And with time, your problems do not really define who you are. That's all.
Okay, thank you so much, Dennis, for coming and helping us be able to handle this conversation. And I hope our viewers, we have followed what we've heard from Dennis and that we will be able to improve it. So asante sana. And as usual, feel free to come back again. Yeah. Thank you so much. And to everyone who has made this show a success, thank you so much, Elias, for being our camera person and director. And thank you, Rose Chege, for being also the floor manager. To you, our viewers, thank you for always ensuring that we interact together and that you always also ask questions and sharing our conversation. It goes a long way. So asanteni sana. Until next time, do have a beautiful day ahead. Goodbye.